I don't know about you, Tosh, but I thought that was flawless.
That was fun.
It was flawless this time. So welcome everybody to our live. You've got two geeks in the arena today. Jessica O'Neill from Pet Intel and
I'm hello from Coyote Canine Dog Training.
So we are coming to you today with a different type of video. We got a submission on our Geeks. We want you guys to send us your videos, so we wanted to definitely honor the video that we received this week. And it's a little bit different, so it led us in slightly different direction, but I think it's a very, very interesting topic. Tosh, you want to pipe in on that?
Yeah, I thought when you sent it in to us, all of us had a look, and it was definitely an interesting topic that we ended up reaching out somewhere else, and
yeah,
here we are now.
Exactly. So the video that we received, I'm going to play it for everybody. But basically, just to preface, this is a deaf dog, and his owner adopted him, and she basically said to us, I love this dog. He does this very bizarre behavior, and I'm wondering if you guys might have some insight as to what he may actually be doing here. So I'm just going to bring it up as big as I can because it's a small video to begin with. So I'm going to bring it up here and I'm going to play it for you guys. It's really short. I'll just let it play in the background. But it kind of, for a second, it had us sort of scratching our heads. He pees on a wall, and this is something he does fairly regularly, and he'll pee on the ground. But in this video, he pees on a wall and then proceeds to cover it up with some real soil and some invisible soil.
Yeah, he buries it. I think we all scratched our heads on that. We were like, well, what's he doing? So we talked about it, and when I first saw it, I thought, well, he's just opposite, right? Some dogs will spread their scent. Maybe he's just burying his scent.
Yeah, and I think, one of the things that as geeks, we kind of said, okay, this is a little bit of like an OCD type behavior. It doesn't seem to have much of a purpose per se, because it's definitely not an effective bury job. Because we realized, he's peed up a wall. So typically when we see a dog like pee onto something, they're usually trying to like leave their scent behind. And I even had a little dog once. She's still with me, and she would like go upside down, like a little dog, and she would put her bum upside down, like up the tree, so she could pee higher on the tree. And we always sort of assumed that was an attempt to make herself seem bigger to whoever would come and read the pee mail later on. So this was something that, I had seen. Definitely, we see dogs pee on things. There are dogs that do bury things too, bury their urine, bury their food, bury their bones, and that is also a very natural behavior. I think what got us scratching our heads a little bit here was that he was peeing up the wall and on the wall and then attempting to cover it. So it's not an effective process, so to speak.
Yeah, and he was only doing it when he peed on the wall or up higher, right? Was that the?
I think he does it often. So I think he does it often. I think he does it when he pees on the ground and when he pees on the wall. So there's not really a like continuity to it. It's not always in the same spot. It's so there's a lot of variation in the behavior. So I reached out to a woman who I know. Her name is Tanya McAllister, and she runs Poets Vision Rescue. And the reason I reached out to her was because this is, number one, a deaf Aussie, and that's what her rescue specializes in. Also, she takes in a lot of neurological cases, so I thought, if anyone's going to be able to tell me if this looks neurological, she will. And so she had an opportunity to view the video too, which was helpful.
Yeah, and what we're going to share is very informative from Tanya.
Uh-huh. So, unfortunately, Tanya wasn't able to join us live tonight because she had other obligations, but we did get an awesome video from Tanya. So I think I'm going to share that with you now. And I just wanted to say hi Tanya, and hi Marco. So I'm gonna go ahead and play this video through for you. And I think, well, that wasn't very clever. Okay, I think you'll find it really informative.
Hi geeks, Tanya here from Poets Vision Aussie Rescue, based out of Perth, Ontario. I'll just give you guys all a little bit of some background on Poets Vision. So we have been running for close to 10 years now, and we specialize in dogs that are born deaf, blind, visually impaired, deaf and blind together, as well as dogs that have neurological issues. I was asked to take part in this session because of the video that the geeks are sharing with you about the dog covering up his urine. So after I watched the video, I was really not concerned with the behavior that the dog was displaying. I don't find it to be neurological in nature at all. I see a very primal behavior that is not, in my opinion, uncommon in dogs to see them burying and covering things. This is not a new phenomenon for dogs. I would suggest to the owner to have a urinalysis run on the dog, just in case he has, for example, a urinary tract infection that is not presenting itself in a typical fashion, and that's why he's covering up his pee. So I did want to share with you some advice on what to look for in dogs with neurological issues when it comes to obsessive compulsive behaviors, which lead to focal seizures. So if you have a dog that is exhibiting any kind of neurological issue in the form of, for example, shadow pouncing, and they may or may not actually be pouncing on something, spinning, circling, light chasing. If you can go to your dog, get the dog's attention, and redirect the dog onto something more appropriate for the dog to be doing, great. You don't have a pathway built yet. If you have a dog that exhibits any of those behaviors that you cannot redirect, please see your vet. Dogs build pathways in their brains. When a dog is exhibiting an OCD behavior, the longer they are allowed to exhibit that behavior, the more likely they are going to build those pathways, and those pathways lead to something called focal seizures. Focal seizures are not grand mal seizures where they're flailing on the ground and, urinating and defecating. That's not what a focal seizure is. A focal seizure looks like behaviors. So they can be snapping at, we call it fly snapping. They can be doing what looks like they're snapping at flies all around their body or their head. They can be obsessively chasing the light, shadow pouncing, digging is another one. If you can't stop it, it's a serious, serious problem. So get the dog to a vet and reach out to a trainer who has experience working with dogs with obsessive compulsive disorders or focal seizures. One thing that you have to remember is if you have a dog that is exhibiting these types of behaviors that cannot be redirected, yes, go to the vet. The vets, most vets know about focal seizures. They will implement a medication regime for your dog. That is wonderful, and it has to be done, but it has to be done along with behavior modification. What you need to to do with these dogs is actually build new pathways in the brain. So a new go-to. So instead of them shadow chasing or tail spinning, they need to learn play with a ball, get a tug, anything that's positive, because those other behaviors are far from positive. They are extremely negative, and they do drive dogs insane. With dogs with focal seizure disorders, they can live a quality of life. Don't ever think they can't. They most certainly can with the help of meds and behavior modification. The other thing to be aware of is that stress will bring these behaviors back out. So, for example, dogs that we bring in through the rescue, we can have worked with our veterinarians, had them on medication, implemented behavior modification plans for them. And when we move them, they're stressed out. We're changing their environment. We let the adopters know that there is a very big possibility that due to the stress, these dogs will start to exhibit those old behaviors again, because the pathways are still there. They never go away. We just build new ones for positive behaviors. Stress can be anything, not just moving to a new environment. So you have to watch out for that too, because what may not appear stressful for us may be very stressful for your dog, and they will start exhibiting those behaviors again. So just be conscientious. It is not fair to your dog, and it's not fair to you, because there is help out there in the form of veterinarians who know about this type of thing, and there are trainers out there who know about this type of thing. We, as a rescue, also provide a lot of support to people who have dogs that exhibit focal seizures and neurological issues. So we can be contacted as well at our Facebook page or email. If you cannot redirect the behaviors, please seek help. Have a great day, everyone. Thank you so much, Geeks, for allowing me to come on your show. I truly appreciate being here, and everybody stay safe and stay home.
Okay. That was I think that was a really, really great explanation of what's going on there with these dogs. And I'll be quite honest, while that video was playing, I don't know if anybody else's dogs react to it, but I have a little squawker back here and a coonhound who would very much love to join the sound of that of that little pup in the background barking. So I was doing some counter conditioning the entire time that video was playing, because I don't have the ability to kind of move them out of here. Yeah, so I was like quietly with my treats doing counter conditioning. So every time that there was a sound, a dog sound, honey, I'm live. And so can you just bring her downstairs, please? Thank you. Sorry, guys, 15-year-olds. So anyway, I just wanted to say that that's something we could talk about another time. But a lot of people I've heard have said that when they hear their dogs hear dogs on the television, they will react to that. Do you have dogs like that at home, Tash?
My dogs don't, but I have seen and worked with dogs that do. My dogs are sound asleep right now. When you left, I went, "Where did she go?"
I don't think anybody else knew that I had left, so that's okay. So let's getting back to the video and some of the awesome things that we got from Tanya. I really think that she's touching on a lot of really important topics that I know are very dear to her heart. I know that when we look at some of these behaviors that dogs display, there are a lot of interesting behaviors that dogs display, and there's not always an exact clear explanation for some of the things that we see. So for me, one of the big things that I noted in this video specifically, the dog does not look distressed. The dog does not look obsessive. It is a bizarre, repetitive sort of behavior that he's doing. but he's not overly stressed about it. And I think that that's a really important thing. When I spoke to Tanya about doing this live, that was one of the things that she pointed out, is that, sometimes we see dogs doing behaviors like this, and we have to kind of assess how it's affecting them emotionally, which of course is right up my alley. And
Yeah.
I really didn't feel like he was having a hard time with it. It was just sort of part of his ritual.
Yeah, just part of his routine. That's what I felt about it too. He was in a good headspace.
Yeah, it seemed like he was in a good headspace. He doesn't look scared or stressed or anything like that. And I mean, like, how many dogs do we know that do like the spinning before they eliminate? I mean, it's
Yeah.
not a necessary behavior. You don't have to patrol the area that many times before you make your movement. But a lot of dogs do it. So do we, is that a behavior of concern? And I would agree with Tanya saying, in this case, it's not really a behavior of concern. It's not hurting anyone. He's not ingesting something that's physiologically bad for him. It's not having a negative effect on his emotional headspace and mental headspace. So it's not hurting anyone. It's not hurting him. To me, this is not something that we need to be concerned about.
Yeah, not something that we need to redirect anymore.
Exactly. So let's go. Let's kind of talk about that. What redirecting means. I feel like that's important. People don't necessarily always understand what redirecting means. And I just want to say we do have a comment from someone here who's saying that her dog Annie does it all the time. So, Rena, can you tell us what exactly it is that Annie does all the time? Because we do have a little bit of a time lag, so I want to make sure that we're talking about the same thing. But let's discuss the interrupters.
Yeah, go ahead, Jess. I know you have some steps that you do when you interrupt a behavior. Maybe we can talk about the difference between, saying no as opposed to calling the dog's name, and where that corrective measure is, I guess, as opposed to an interrupter.
Yeah, to me that's a really important distinction. It's a difficult distinction because sometimes when we do deliver an interrupter, if it's perceived as something sort of adversive or like a reprimand to the dog, then it could be perceived as something punitive. But for me, an interrupter is really just get their attention. And I kind of have a 1, 2, 3 rule with that, right? So it's like if you say Fido, 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 and you keep saying Fido, Fido, Fido over and over again, I mean, you're just repeating yourself. There's nothing changing. I think that that's actually the definition of insanity, is doing something over and over again and expecting a different result. So I have a 1, 2, 3. You call his name twice. He hasn't listened. You need to try something different. Clap your hands, make weird sound, make weird movement, get the dog's attention, which is step 1. Because once you have their attention, it's really important to recognize that you need to now tell them what else to do with that energy or that intensity. And Tanya was sort of touching on that too in the video, like teach them how to chew a ball or play with a toy or play tug or something. So there needs to be an outlet that is appropriate for what the dog is experiencing in that moment.
Yeah, there needs to be an aftermark, right? So where a lot of people might get it wrong, or I shouldn't say wrong, but where their misunderstanding is they'll interrupt, but they won't show them what is expected out of them.
Yeah,
right? They won't teach them. Mm-hmm. So, for example, you're yelling Fido. Okay, Fido paid attention. Okay, let's go on place, or grab a bone, grab a ball, do something like you were saying with that energy.
Yeah, and sometimes it could be something as simple as just like, hey, look up at me. I mean, it doesn't necessarily need to be something totally elaborate. But one thing I would really encourage people to do is to consider what they're asking the dog to do. If it matches what the dog was attempting to do, if it matches the energy, the sensitivity, the state of mind, the environment. So, for instance, if you have a dog who's like super jazzed up and is tail spinning, like chasing his tail, and you are intending to interrupt that behavior, you might have to make like a grand motion, and the dog looks at you. Well, if you don't say, let's do something else with that energy, like, okay, go get that ball, or like, something more, go play with your other friend, something that's equally as much of an outlet, but an appropriate outlet, then you're constantly asking your dog to shut down, and asking them to go from like maybe a level 8 or something of adrenaline that they're experiencing, and expecting that they're going to go straight down to a 2 and pay attention to you and be calm and in their place, can sometimes, in my opinion, it can sometimes be a difficult transition. You might be, going against the grain.
Yeah, I agree with you there. One of the things that I wanted to talk about and look at for is your consistency, right? So a lot of people, when we redirect the attention and go to their ball or go to their place, whatever the case scenario is, if you're not consistent and continuingly to do that behavior, so it's intermittent positive reinforcement, right? So if 8 out of 10 times you're doing the redirection, but they still get away with that behavior out of that 10 times, maybe twice, those pathways are never going to be built on, right? You're never going to be able to what's the word I'm looking for? Help me out here, Jeff.
You're not be able to really get that to be their new default, right? They're not going to go as a default. They're always going to continue to go back and visit that other behavior. And one thing.
Yes, so you're not going to do the behavior. That's the word I was looking for.
So one thing that I can't remember exactly where I heard it. I think I was doing some studies on cognitive function and things like that, and I remember reading about this, and it really, really resonated with me, so I'll share it, about neural pathways. So let's say in your backyard you have a tree that you like to visit in the corner of your yard, and you don't cut your grass, and you let grass grow up really far, really, really tall, and you want to visit this tree. Maybe you're picking apples from the tree, and you go every day and you take the same path to the tree. So you're walking the same path. Eventually, what you see is a footpath that starts to be created. The grass has grown up everywhere else, and then there's an actual lineage of path. So even if it's somebody different, if they went out into your backyard and you said, please go get an apple from the tree, they're going to walk that path too, because it's so obvious. It's right there. It's very clear. So it creates a clear path that is the easiest one to take, and it's a familiar path, and it's cleared, and it's easy to use. If at some point in time we wanted to try and create a new path, it will be difficult because the grass is so grown up and there's no clear pathway there. So now we have to start taking this new path, and it will be difficult. So we have to create a reason. There has to be a motive to take the new path. And if we still start taking that path, we may actually create an indentation. So now there are 2 options. So you can walk the old path still if you wanted to, but you have to keep walking the new path in order to keep it clear and keep an obvious direction for you to go long enough that the old pathway actually starts to grow up a bit. Eventually, we could get to a point where the new one is the clearest one to take. But if we haven't been taking it that often, and like you said, if it's inconsistent, if sometimes you take the new one, sometimes you don't, it's never going to be the go-to behavior, the new default behavior. And in this situation, we've got Tanya piped up, says, right, teach the appropriate way to do it. That's right. So it's really important that in this situation, because these behaviors, as Tanya's describing, could potentially be harmful in a physiological way.
Yes.
Like it manifests, as she's describing, these focal seizures, which is basically like a repetition of that behavior, but it's a misfiring of the brain. And I might be getting that wrong, but Tanya, you can pipe up and tell me if I'm on the right track. But that's the way I'm understanding it. And then even those focal seizures, if they happen long enough, can actually turn into grand mal seizures and other sort of physiological issues. So for me, that was a very powerful statement, because it's not like you shouldn't just say, it's okay. I don't care. I don't care if he chases the light all over the house. I don't care if he chases his tail incessantly, because some of these things are not like what we're seeing in the video. Some of these things are not like, oh, that one's not hurt. Some of these things actually are detrimental to their mental space, and that's how I see them differently.
Yeah, absolutely. And you're going to be building onto those stressors,
Mm-hmm.
right? So it might be, well, I might chase the light for a minute. Well, 3 weeks from now, he might be chasing the light 24/7, and mentally the dog is chaotic. It's toxic. It's not healthy for the dog. It's
And,
a negative emotional response.
and then, just as you're saying that, I'm thinking like, yeah, and then you might start seeing it generalized, right? I've actually seen this happen because I have worked with quite a few dogs like this, but I've seen it generalized to go from like, first somebody's using like a laser pointer and their dog's really into it. Next thing you know, like, there's a weird light that comes in and they're following it. And now they can't stop watching all the lights. And now they're chasing lights outside. And now they're chasing the car because the car has lights on it. And it can generalize and become a really toxic space for the dog. So I think testing the interrupter, like if you do have a dog who's displaying some bizarre sort of repetitive behavior, some of the things that Tanya outlined in her video, if you do have a dog who's doing some of those things, testing it to see if you can interrupt it, and then if you can, probably a good idea to continue to do that, right? And maybe build some other activities that are more appropriate and a more appropriate outlet.
Yeah, I agree with you. There is some comments from Tanya coming up here. It's lagging on my end, Jess, if you want to read them.
Oh my goodness, Tanya, I'm so sorry. Okay. Teach the appropriate behavior that you want to see. The deafies, which I guess means deaf dogs, we will always teach them the look command, so that is an appropriate redirect. Okay, yeah, we were talking about that. So she's saying, and that is why the dogs with focal seizures, you cannot allow those negative behaviors to happen. You always have to be taking the new path. Yes, exactly. So much like that description I was just saying, Tanya's sort of reinforcing that, you really do need to keep taking the new path, hopefully to allow the old path to kind of not be the go-to, but also because if you don't take the new path, it quickly grows in. It quickly grows in, and then it's not there as an option. She says if it's not okay, it's not okay for any dog to exhibit OCD behaviors that cannot be redirected, because it will 90% of the time end up in focal seizures. That is a really, really astonishing statistic. If that is the case here, is like 90% of the time OCD behaviors end up in focal seizures. Like that's pretty phenomenal.
That's really high. Yeah. Wow. I didn't realize it was that high.
No, neither did I. So I think, and some, I know when I was talking with Tanya a little bit, we were talking about a little bit like some breeds are more prone to some of these things than others. And then of course there's genetics and these types of things that come into play. So every dog is an individual, but I do want to say that it can show up in any breed. So even though some dogs are more predisposed to it than others, some breeds and some genetics and things like that, I think you can really see this in any breed. And and now Tanya's piping in also saying the number is double in Merle and deaf dogs. Wow. So if you have a Merle dog or a dog who has deafness, it sounds like this is something that you'll see double the time. So Poet's Vision is an excellent resource as well if anybody is experiencing these types of things. I myself am with my company, we've worked with these types of behaviors before, as has Coyote Canine. So if you are looking for support, definitely, because it's a physiological issue, definitely connecting with your vet. And if you're looking for someone to work with it on a behavior level, as Tanya said, medication is probably really needed in this situation, like mandatory in a situation where it's already manifesting in seizures, but should definitely be done.
And also remembering that medication is important, and Tanya mentioned it, you've mentioned it, and we've all agreed that doing the behavior modification with it, because the medication will just, it'll cover the pathways, it'll, cover them, but you need to start creating those new pathways.
Exactly.
Which is where the behavior modification will come into play.
Exactly. So even if you are using the medication, you're going to need that extra support. So please reach out to us if you need that support. I know we're living in a virtual world right now, but we're all doing virtual consultations as well, so we can help you even at a distance. So I want to, okay, she's explaining now. I'm not explaining myself properly. 90% of the deaf and double Merle dogs with OCD will end up with focal seizures. Okay, so just to clarify, that's what she's saying, is that 90% of deaf and double Merle dogs with OCD will end up with focal seizures. So again, it's a really high number. So I think that's something to consider. Most people who have deaf dogs or double Merle dogs, I would hope, or I would assume, are probably already working with someone to help mitigate or to do the proper training or to teach them in a different way. So so I think that that's important as well. So I'm going to go ahead.
Yeah, I went.
Sorry, Tash. I know we have a little bit of a lag, so we're trying to navigate between the little lag that we have.
Yeah, no, that's okay. I was just going to say I agree with you.
Okay. I'm going to try and get us off full screen here for a second and there we go. I want to play this video one more time for everybody because I'm going to play it in the background here and we can keep it going. We have somebody else who's piping up on the chat as well saying, my deaf bull terrier has OCD behaviors and was in a puppy mill for 9 years. I've had a hard time redirecting this need for bouncing and nesting when he's in his crate or on a bed or a chair. Well, Cassie, I would really recommend that you send us those videos as well, and maybe we can share them with people, and maybe you can let us know what types of redirections have worked best for you and what maybe you're seeing ahead of time. So is there an indicator that these things are going to happen? What are the triggers? So a lot of these behaviors really require you to be a little bit of a detective.
Yeah. There's another one, another comment that popped up there.
Oh, from Rosemary, can inappropriate expectations from the handler owner also cause these behaviors that may be perceived as negative? Trying to continually negate breed-specific behaviors may cause stress in the dog. I'm not talking about chasing one's tail, but, rather certain rituals or instincts that are inconvenient. Whoa, that's a really good point, Rosemary. I think that that's a whole other ball of wax, but I would definitely say, if you're asking me my professional opinion, can inappropriate expectations from handlers cause behaviors that may be perceived as negative? 100%, in my opinion. Tash, what do you think on that?
I agree with you 100%.
Yeah. I mean,
I'm sorry that I'm lagging on my end here, so I'm trying to read and listen.
So and Tanya's piped up with a big yes as well. So I would say 100%. We did hear Tanya talk a little bit about how stress can make these behaviors manifest even more. That's true. Inappropriate handling or inappropriate expectations for sure can make these behaviors manifest. And like a lack of experience, exposure. So some of these behaviors are just naturally brought on by stress. They may not have a predisposition to it, but then you'll see a dog who's started to develop OCD behaviors. We see it a lot of the time actually in zoos, to be quite honest, like confinement and, not being properly taught how to be in those situations, or maybe not intended genetically to be in those types of situations. The animals at the zoo will start to do repetitive patterns. And so we see those things. So I would definitely agree with you, Rosemary. I think half of the job that I have anyway is trying to help people to better understand the beast that they have in their hands.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's really often that we see people who have, got a beagle, but they hate that the dog is getting into the garbage or can't keep its nose off the ground. I mean, these are unfortunate things. So I think that this kind of can go across the board.
Yeah.
Or, they have like a really intense German Shepherd or Border Collie or a dog who's like driven to work and they live in suburbia.
I see that in guardian breeds.
Right. We see that like a dog who was bred to like live on a farm with a bunch of animals and guard the flock is living in a home. It's well
in an
loved.
apartment, and
Yeah. So,
yeah, and then the expectations are to be a friendly golden retriever.
exactly.
We see it a lot where the expectations are far. I don't want to say far fetched, but pretty far in terms of the breed that's in front of you.
Right. So, I mean, I think that that's the thing. I can't tell you how many times I had to say to people, I can help you, but I can't make him not a Jack Russell Terrier. Like that is, or
Yeah.
whatever breed, like I can help you to help him become his best self. I can teach you how to read him. I can help you learn to understand him and communicate with him better. I can't make him not a German Shepherd. Like that is what he is. So I think, that does come into play quite often. So understanding what you've got, it's like with our children, we don't
Yeah.
necessarily get to choose personality.
Yeah, I would say having the expectations is, if you're getting angry or frustrated with the dogs that are displaying OCD behaviors or that are deaf, and you get frustrated with the dog, yeah, it's going to manifest in probably a worser side than what they're displaying because you're not giving them that other outlet or that redirection.
Absolutely. And like, Tanya said it, we've all said it, stress is going to make any of these behaviors worse. Patience is a virtue that I don't have naturally myself. It is not one of my natural virtues. It is something that dogs have taught me, and I actually have more patience with dogs than with people a lot of the time. It is because it is so. If you don't have the patience, it can be incredibly detrimental to your relationship and to that animal's mental emotional health. So, I wanted to.
Patience is number one.
Sorry, do you want go ahead, Tash? I know you have a leg. You're playing catch up.
No, I was going to say patience is number one. I can say I am one very patient, and I've always been patient, and I'm thankful being in the dog industry. I've grown on that patience, and it's now helped me in motherhood too. So.
Oh yeah, that'll help you. Wait till they're teenagers. Yeah, they're cute right now, so
Yeah.
you don't kill them.
I'll be coming back on this video and going, oh shoot.
So I think that we've managed to get some really good information out there in this live. We do have another live scheduled for Sunday. Is that correct? Am I talking out of turn? Yes, we do. Okay.
Sunday.
Yeah, so we have another live for Sunday. We will be letting you know when that's coming up at what time, but it's probably going to be in a similar time slot. And Tanya says, wait till the kids are in their 20s. Oh my goodness, no. They won't be in my house at that point, so I won't have to worry as much. So I guess we will see you on Sunday. I hope that this information has been really valuable to you. If you have a dog that's in this situation, I really encourage you to follow the directives that Tanya put out there. Reach out to an expert for some help. Reach out to the rescue. They're offering to provide that support to you and some advice. Tanya's always very good about giving people time who may need some support. So please reach out to them. And you can definitely share your videos with us. We will share them on our page. And we are always looking for more videos to geek out to. So if you have some, please send them along. And yeah, that's it for me. Do you have anything else to add, Tash?
Yeah, I'll just two things: patience and consistency. Remember those.
Patience and consistency.
My words of wisdom for the night.
Perfect. All right, guys. Thank you so much for geeking out with us, and we will see you on Sunday.
Okay, bye, guys.